This is the Next Bite of Life podcast, the place to be to hear personal stories from expats, digital nomads, and everybody else taking their next bite of life. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Next Bite of Life podcast. My name is Kem Kem. Today's guest is Xiaochen, and I am so excited to talk to him. And I think you guys will be really interested in what he has to say because he has lived in so many places. So let's get to say hello to him, right? Say hello.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. Hi to all the listeners. My name is Xiaochen Su. I currently live in Tokyo, Japan. And as Kem mentioned, I have been living in many different countries before I moved back to Japan. So today, hopefully, I'll get to talk to you about some of those experiences.
That's amazing. I mean, when did the urge to travel really happen for you? Where were you born and how did you end up in Tokyo?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I started traveling before I even really had a choice. I was born in
Right.
China, but
Okay.
my family moved to Japan when I was 5 years old.
Uh-huh.
And then after about 6 years living in Japan, my family decided to move to the US again. So
Okay.
before basically the age of 12, I already lived in three different countries.
Gotcha.
um, yeah, so of course I had no say whatsoever in those experiences, but those experiences sort of taught me the importance of, I guess, diversity in a way,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
have been a minority in
Yeah.
basically all of these places I lived in, and there were many other minorities, many other immigrants who were living in the immediate community that I was living in at that time, and all of us really had to, sort of band together in order to survive in a, brand new society that we knew very little about in the very beginning, right? So yeah, that sort of is an experience that many people who basically was born and grew up in one country would not have the perspective of.
Yes, it's very true. Now, I was born and raised in Nigeria and then moved to
Mm,
the US when I was very young. So I understand what you're saying, feeling like a minority and you do need to band together and,
right, right.
to survive because you're just in a foreign land. It's like they
Yeah.
throw you to the wolves or you're just,
Yep.
at
Yep.
least my parents did, like, go fend for yourself.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
Now,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead, please.
No,
No, you go ahead.
unfortunately, at least in many Asian cultures, parents, grandparents, and other sort of older members of society tend to become like sort of the guide to younger
Yeah.
members of society, where they provide, sort of life advice on life, on work, on how to live, socialize them into society. But when you're an immigrant, that sort of breaks down because
Yeah,
your parents don't know anything either about the new society,
exactly.
right? And more often than not, kids tend to learn faster, right? They just absorb
Yes.
things faster.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's very much possible that the kids become more knowledgeable about that new place that the family is living at than the parents.
It's very true. Like a lot of my friends that come from like Spanish speaking countries, they know more like living in LA and they're actually almost the ones that teach their parents because there's this thing and you're just sort of like in a little cocoon and they're scared, they don't speak the language and they remain like that. So it's the kids that really interact with the culture, the new culture, and kind of do like the bridge, the gap in between, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, unfortunately, especially for Hispanic community, I'm sure it's the same. It's the same for Chinese community as well. If you go to the US, there's so many, Hispanics everywhere. There's so many Chinese
Yeah.
people everywhere. It's so
Yeah.
easy to just stick to your own community and not
Yeah.
interact outside of it because there's always
Yeah.
somebody from your background that you can speak to in your native tongue, and that,
Exactly.
and just have your own little community that take care of every need that you have in your daily life. So you just kind of, people who are older, especially, tend to just be stuck in that little community and not
Yeah.
reach out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. You get comfortable.
right.
Now,
Absolutely.
I mean, I was like, I saw how many countries you had visited, and I was just gobsmacked. So you just tell me how many countries you have visited
Well, I haven't really
and
counted
lived in.
exactly, but it's somewhere along the lines of like 98 or 97, something around there. Yeah, I
Wow.
mean, I mean, occasionally you read on the news about people who travel to like every single country in the world. You know,
Yeah.
I guess I'm trying to do that at some point, but just
Are you
pacing myself.
consciously trying to
Yeah,
do that?
just pacing myself, not like
Okay.
finish the whole thing very fast. But I guess I am lucky in that I've been working in many parts of the world. And if I live in a particular country, it makes it easy to travel to countries around it. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's easier than say, for example, I live in Japan and I have to go to South America or something like that, right? Then
Uh-huh.
obviously it's very time consuming and it costs a lot of
Mm-hmm.
money. But say if
Mm-hmm.
I live in South America, then it'd be much easier. So yeah,
Wow. So when you travel, like, when you first set about going and you said to yourself, I wouldn't mind going and visiting or living in all the countries in the world.
yeah.
Did you have like a particular place to start? Like what was the game plan? Like how did that come about?
I mean, I guess well, I guess step one would be to sort of look for a job where yeah, where
Well,
I
that's
yeah.
always helpful.
Yeah, that's quite difficult because so I attended middle school, high school, and university in the U.S. So uh, at at the point that I graduated from university, basically all my experiences are in the U.S. Right? I mean, I lived in
Okay.
Japan when I was a child. I lived in China when I was a child as well. But as far as being socialized, yeah, I was basically only in the U.S. until about age of 21. Right? So after that, I just had to sort of find somewhere where people are willing to take somebody who
Yeah.
is unfamiliar with that country
Yeah.
and still be able to provide some sort of value as an employee, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, actually, my first job also out of university was in Japan because, of
Okay.
course, I had that Japan connection from when I was a
Yes.
child and I speak the language. So it
Yeah.
was an easy first step.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I worked for a e-commerce company that
Okay.
operates an online shopping site, a pretty big one in Japan.
Okay.
Yeah, out of university, and that sort of gave me the first step that go let me go beyond just my cultural connections with the country,
Uh-huh.
but sort of providing the professional skills, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I worked in online shopping in this tech space. I was able to sort of look at other tech companies in other countries, so who that
Hmm.
does similar kind of work. So that allowed me to sort of jump into those countries without
Ah,
necessarily knowing about those countries.
gotcha. Okay. So that made it a lot easier. So that
Yeah,
would be a recommended route for anybody thinking about this, right? Would be, go where you have the most chance, the
yeah,
best chance of getting a job. Like you use your Japanese history to be, to get a job there.
yeah. I mean, I think the tech sector is quite special in that it tends to be very international. So, I mean, in Japan, this my first job out of university. I was working for a Japanese company, so it wasn't very international. But my
Hmm.
next job, I worked in Southeast Asia for another online shopping company, but this was a
Uh,
German company, and
okay.
it basically had a very international sort of group of employees from all over Europe, from all over
Okay.
Southeast Asia. A lot of Indians, a lot of Europeans, a lot of Americans. So they were very keen to hire people from outside the country as well, outside the country where it's operating as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that sort of reduced the basically the obstacle of getting into that local country.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Now, I saw in your bio that you actually did your PhD or your master's in Sino-Russia relationship.
That is correct. Yeah. So
So
I
please tell us a little bit about
yeah, gladly. So I actually finished my PhD just last year in November. So it's only
Oh,
been about half
congratulations.
a year. Yeah, it took me like 4 years to get it done.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah. And so
Better late than never.
yeah, better late than never. Yeah.
Yep.
So the research is in sociology, right? So
Okay.
sociology in general is the study of different social groups and how they
Hmm.
interact with one another. My particular research interest, as you mentioned, is the study of well Chinese-Russian relations, but not at the high political level, but more at the
Hmm.
grassroots level among
Okay.
people. So I was particularly looking at Chinese immigrants in Russia and how they
Okay.
basically build their local immigrant community as well as interact with local Russians as they try to survive in this new society, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah. This is a very sort of understudied topic among sort of immigration scholars because it's a very new community that has
Okay.
only
I
been
was
in
about to ask
existence.
you.
Yeah, for only
So,
about yeah. So it has only been in existence for about 2 decades or so. Well, I guess three
oh
decades.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. The community didn't really start to develop until the early 1990s. So yeah, I guess most of the members of the community are still first generation immigrants.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow. I didn't even know there was that much of a presence there. So, I find it very interesting. And did you feel like they were there to stay? Like, is it something that is seen as a positive move, like in Russia? I mean, as far as what you were able to, are they able to integrate
Hmm.
well enough?
Yeah, so I guess I mean, of course, it depends on the larger picture of the economic condition in Russia as well. As the war in Ukraine is going on, Russia is not exactly doing great economically, right?
Exactly.
And most of the Chinese immigrants who live there, they are small traders. So they sort of import products from China and sell it in
Ah,
Russia to local
okay,
consumers. So that
gotcha.
for that business to work, obviously, local consumers need to have enough income to be able to
Yeah,
purchase the
of
product.
course.
Right? Yeah, and local incomes are not looking good at the moment,
Yeah,
at
of
least. Yeah.
course, of course.
So yeah, yeah. But at the same time, there is a very very strong need for a lot of the products that these Chinese traders were selling in Russia because
Okay.
Russia doesn't really have a very strong industrial base to be able to manufacture the same
Ah,
products locally. So,
got
and to be honest, especially now, there are not really many foreign companies operating in Russia, right? This
yeah,
is
yeah.
even before the war in Ukraine, that
Before,
was the case,
okay.
and now it's even
Now
more the case.
it's
Yeah.
non-existent. Yeah.
So so yeah, so basically, for many of the smaller cities and towns in Russia, there really isn't that much of an alternative aside from these Chinese traders that are importing
Mhm.
products from China. They
Okay.
really have nowhere else to get the same goods, right?
Yeah,
Either
yeah.
from other countries or from locally manufactured products. Yeah.
Gotcha. Ah. So let's segue from that, and I want to find out, how did you end up in East Africa? This is one of the places that you lived, right?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah. So as I mentioned, I was doing my PhD in Japan, but before that, I was working for a couple of years in Tanzania, where I was doing working at NGO, American NGO that does microfinance in the agriculture
Okay.
sector. Well, part of the reason is that I mentioned earlier that I was working for an online shopping company in Southeast Asia,
Yeah.
and that lasted
Hmm.
about 3.5 years. And I felt like there was a need for change in my career,
Hmm. Hmm.
less
Hmm.
commercial and more sort of more public serving, if
Yes.
if those are the right words. And at the same
Yeah.
time, yeah, and at the same time, I would like to experience another side of the world that I haven't been to at that point in time, and decided that was Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
You really wanted to put yourself out there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, a simple Google search sort of
Yeah.
gave me a lot of options. And yeah, thankfully, the NGO that I worked for took me in and gave me
Wow.
the opportunity to be based in rural Tanzania for a couple of years
How was
doing
that
NGO work.
experience?
Well, I mean, so I work in the agriculture sector, which means, in reality, means basically helping farmers to improve their yield on their farms, right? By
Okay.
providing them with loans so they can
Mm-hmm.
buy good fertilizers, good seeds,
Mm-hmm.
so that their farms are more productive. So what that means is a lot of sort of on the field work, right? Visiting people's farms, making sure they're using the inputs correctly, and making
Okay.
sure that because it's a loan, making sure that they're repaying their loans, right? They're financially
Okay. Yes.
sound
Yeah.
at the same time.
Uh-huh.
So
Mm.
yeah, it was a lot of interaction in a rural area, and I
Okay.
myself, I grew up basically in urban areas all my life
Yeah.
up until that point. So it was a
Yeah.
brand new experience for me in terms
Uh-huh.
of the kind of lifestyle that people have, the different mentalities that people have. So it was
Yeah.
quite an eye-opening experience that sort of provided me with a brand new perspective that I didn't have before.
Was it really hard to adjust to the things? I mean, I don't know. I've never been to Tanzania, but I assume if it's anything like Nigeria, for instance, you don't have electricity all the time. There are all these things. Was it hard for you to adjust to that after being in the US?
Well, I mean, I think there was I guess there was expectations that certain infrastructure wouldn't work. So I certainly didn't expect electricity to be on all the time, which was correct.
Yes.
Water wasn't there all the time, which was correct. But yeah, again,
Uh-huh.
as far as my day to day work is concerned, which touches on basically farming, right? It doesn't
Mhm,
really
mhm.
hamper the work in any significant way. Like people do without electricity, they do without running water. I mean, they can still farm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so we can still do our work to a certain degree. It's just that we need to be a little bit more old fashioned in terms of how we operate, right? Instead of,
Exactly.
say, for example, managing data on computer, we have to go back to paper and pen, right? So
Right.
something like
Right
that.
now.
Right, right.
Like
Yeah.
somebody bring the ledger out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, of course, part of my work was tracking loan repayments, right? Giving
Yeah. Yeah.
loans, getting repaid in loans. So, a
Yeah.
lot of that required, tracking data, making sure people are paid, and making sure we keep track of who's, tardy on their repayment and all of that. So, yeah, a
Now.
lot of that required, keeping ledgers on notebooks rather than computers. Yeah, so that was
If you,
quite eye opening.
yeah. Now, was there any other places that you lived in that you said, okay, this kind of reminds me of Tanzania, for instance? I mean, I know out of those 90 something countries, there must have been some that stand out. Like, which ones stand out the most to you that you can just go and go click? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of places that I travel to that sort of reminded me of Tanzania. Not so much as what it looks like, but like just
Hmm.
how people deal with life, if that's the right word. Like people's
Yeah. Yeah.
mentality
No, it
toward
is.
how
Yeah.
they live,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
The people in Tanzania tend to be very relaxed about their
Hmm.
day to day life. I mean,
Yeah.
certainly most of them are not financially well off,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
people make do with whatever they have. They help each other out, so there is a
Yeah.
very strong sense of community ties. Yeah, and everyone sort of know each other. They sort of yeah, help each other when things become difficult for one
Yeah.
member of the community. And that sort of mentality does exist in different forms, but to a similar end in many parts of
Yeah.
the world. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I've been to some small towns in South America, which is similar
Hmm.
in a way, and of course in other African countries that I've traveled to, there are similarities there as well. Yeah, and yeah, even in Southeast Asia, a lot of small towns
Uh-huh.
are sort of operate the same way. So there is very strong
Yeah,
sense of community.
I think it's absolutely amazing that you can find this in different parts of the world, and it's
Right.
usually communities that don't have a lot. And it
Mm,
seems like the westernized places with everything on their doorstep are the ones that have a hard time really, you know, making it sort of like a community effort. It's more like me, me. And then you have this people, I have so little, but here you can have some of it, or I will help
yeah.
you solve your problem because if you do good, we all do good. And I think it's just very strange to like observe. And for
Right.
somebody who travels, from one place and sees how the rest of the world was,
Yeah.
lives, it makes you think and it makes you a different person.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think. Yeah. I think one thing. I mean, it's the same here in Japan as well. I guess there is a pretty big difference between people who live in bigger cities and people who live in more rural areas and smaller
Hmm.
towns. In bigger cities, people don't even talk to people in their same apartment block. Right? Like,
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know who lives right next to me, for instance. Right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think part of it. I mean, this is just my opinion, but because public services are so good, hospitals are always nearby, emergency services are always nearby, the police is always on
Mm,
call, right? Like
mhm.
people know that if something bad happens, if they face difficulties, they can, pick up the phone or, email somebody and there's always going to be
Yeah,
some sort of help. They have that sort of
it's true.
confidence, right? That,
Yeah.
yeah, and because they believe in public services being good, they don't really need to like go out and create a community of mutual help.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
sad, but
Yeah,
when
it
you
is.
see it, but and that's one of the reasons why I like talking to people that travel,
Mm,
because really, it really changes your perspective, and you don't
yeah,
even realize how much you change until you
yeah,
start noticing the differences between where you came from and what's out there, And if
yeah,
everybody
absolutely.
travels, phew, I
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
we could do amazing things for the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, people can read about other countries in books or, watch videos or something like that, but it certainly doesn't replace traveling and going there,
No,
seeing
it
things
does not.
firsthand. Yeah.
It does not. Now, Shachen, let me ask you this part. Since you're really concerned about giving back as opposed to like when you were on the other side, now you've started a study abroad NGO. Can you tell us? I mean, nonprofit organization. Can you tell us about this, please?
Sure. Yeah. So a couple years ago, when I was still a PhD student at the University of Tokyo in Japan, I decided to sort of start a little initiative with a few of my colleagues, a few of my classmates, to help more foreign students come to Japanese universities to study. Right.
Hmm.
And this organization is called Study Abroad Research Institute. You can find us at www.studyabroad-research.org. I repeat, it's studyabroad-research.org. Where and this is our website, but what we do is that we provide information about different programs, academic programs that are available in Japanese universities for foreign students. Many students around the world are very interested in study abroad. I don't think study abroad is a very new concept anywhere anymore. But for many people, studying abroad in Japan is not something that they probably have thought about, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Especially in places that are more geographically far away from Japan. We don't see
Yes.
a lot of foreign students. I mean, we see a lot of Asian students here, and that's
Yeah. Yeah.
because they're close to Japan. It's relatively
Yeah.
cheap for them to study abroad in Japan than somewhere else. But yeah, a lot of Japanese students want to diversify their pool of
Yeah.
international students as well. Um, yeah, outside of Asia, and one place in particular they are looking at is to get more African students. Right,
Oh wow. This is
there is a
good.
very very obvious underrepresentation of Africans in Japanese universities. I think at last check, there are only a few thousand African students studying abroad in Japan. Even though
Mhm.
the international student population here is around, I believe, about 400,000 at the last check
Oh,
before
wow.
COVID. Yeah, so it
Wow.
makes up a very, very small portion of the overall international
Yeah.
student body. And many Japanese universities are trying to change this, and we're trying to help, right? So
Yeah.
our work is to, like I said, provide information about study abroad programs in Japanese universities, but not just to provide the information, but go out and reach out to different African organizations, to different African
Mhm.
schools,
Yeah.
so that we can talk to young people directly, so that they know that these sort of opportunities exist, right?
Yeah, it's amazing that you say that because, being from Nigeria, I was just home in December. Nobody really pushes this. Nobody really talks about Japan when it comes to study abroad. I mean, everybody's in Canada, everybody's in the US, everybody's in the usual suspect
Yeah,
places,
yeah,
but I didn't even know that there was one available or one that they could think about, you know.
yeah.
So this is good to hear.
I mean, the reason why I decided to target Africa is, of course, like I said, African students are underrepresented, but it's also because of my personal experience. So I mentioned that I was living in Tanzania before I came back to Japan,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
I actually applied to the university where I did my PhD directly from Tanzania.
Ah.
Yeah, so and the whole process was done online. Yeah, from Tanzania. So this whole process, I mean, people think it's quite difficult, but I did it. It wasn't all that
Yeah.
difficult. The process itself
Yeah.
was very much doable, and I think
That's
people just need to know that the process does exist for them to sort of look into.
That is really great to hear. Now, is there like an age limit, for instance? Is it only for, 18-year-olds, or is it, a broader audience?
Yeah, I think. I mean, these are full-time programs at
Okay.
both the undergraduate and the graduate level. So
Okay.
when I started my PhD, I was already in my late 20s. I'm
Okay.
33 now. So yeah, I was in my late
Still younger.
20s when I was in my late 20s when I started. When I applied, so yeah, there isn't really much of an age limit, as long as you have the necessary qualifications.
Got it. Okay. Well, that's good to know. I'm going to have this up on the show notes, which will tell, the website that you need to contact
Thank you.
and find out more about this program that I think is a wonderful thing. And it's just, the sky's the limit when you go out and you travel and you get to study abroad. I mean, what's better
Yeah,
than that? I can't even
yeah, of
think of.
course. Yeah, I mean, we don't really expect people to just be in Japan forever when they study abroad in Japan, right? So
Yeah,
this is just the first step. Of course, a lot of
exactly.
people like Japan; they stick around. That's great.
Right.
Some people don't like Japan after they study and they go somewhere else. That's okay too. I
Just like
mean,
just like
yeah.
everywhere.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, it's just the first step for a international career that doesn't have to be
Yeah.
limited to a particular place or country.
Exactly. I mean, like you said, it's a stepping stone. So this
Right.
really, imagine the pool of people and the kind of contacts you could make from a program like this. It's invaluable. I mean, this is something that will follow you all your life if you wanted to, which is fantastic.
Absolutely.
Now,
Yeah.
so your advice for anybody who's thinking about being a man of the world like you are would be to do what?
I mean, I think, of course, COVID makes things difficult, but I think even before COVID, at least, we live in a pretty lucky time in that we have so much information that's available online, right? I mean,
True.
if people want to look for a job in another country, another company, in a totally different industry, it's possible to just do it from, your laptop or from your smartphone.
Yeah.
Yeah, the to start a to do a little bit of research on by your own, it's quite easy these days, right?
Yes, it
You don't
is.
really have to have you don't really need to have any sort of professional connection to get started, right? I
Yeah.
mean, this was the same for me when I started in the NGO sector, working in Tanzania.
Hmm.
I had no connection with the NGO world before that, but everything just started with doing some Google search.
Yeah.
so so it's yeah, it's totally possible. So I think for people who are interested in living abroad, whether studying or working, the
Hmm.
first step would just think a little bit about where you want to go, what you
Hmm.
want to do, and come
Hmm.
up with some keywords and just type it into Google. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Do your research, people.
right, right, yeah,
It's nice to have all the information, but you gotta do a little sweat equity as well. And,
absolutely.
it's not much,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can provide the information, but at the end of the day, say for example, for universities, it's still you that's applying, right? Still you going through
Exactly.
the process. We're just the
Yeah.
information providers.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
that's already a huge step anyway, for
yeah,
especially if it's something that you didn't even know about. So you can go on your website and, get the information and get going.
yeah,
It can
absolutely.
be done.
Yeah, it can be done. I did it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Now I'm going to leave you for the rest of the day because I know it's late in China. I mean, in Japan now, but I want to end this interview by asking you just, randomly, what would be your most favorite country that you visited?
Oh, yeah. Ask this question a lot. It's a very hard question to answer. I mean,
I know. That's why
yeah.
I asked
I
it.
mean, I don't know. I mean, it's very hard to sort of say one country is the best in everything.
Okay, top three
Uh,
then. Top three.
yeah, I mean, uh, I really have to think about this one, but yeah, but I think well, I guess to be tapped into current affairs a little bit. I actually quite liked Ukraine before the war
Okay.
happened.
Actually, I've
Yeah,
heard a lot of people say that. I've heard a
yeah.
lot of people say that.
Yeah, I mean, I actually traveled to Ukraine. So I was doing my master's studies in London back in
Hmm.
2012 or so. And one of the places I went to was Ukraine during February when it was really cold.
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and because it's a very cold place, the local cuisine is really geared toward keeping people warm,
Hmm.
and they use very simple ingredients, some root vegetables, a lot of potatoes, a lot of meat, but
Hmm.
the way
Hmm.
they cook it into stews,
Hmm.
very warm dishes, it's just very good at keeping people, warm,
Okay.
even while
Hmm.
they're outside in, freezing cold, minus, 10, 20 degrees temperature.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I mean, it's very hearty meals like that that really makes me sort of remember a place for yeah,
Yeah.
it's
A,
just
a
yeah, it's good
foodie.
memories.
So, okay, Ukraine. And two more.
Two more, wow,
Yeah.
a hard one.
Well,
Yeah,
you said
two
you
more.
couldn't narrow it down. So I thought, top three then.
I mean, okay, yes, okay, all right. I guess the next one, I guess I'll pick a different continent, is Laos.
Oh.
Yeah, this is a country in Southeast Asia basically no one visits.
Mm-hmm.
There are a
Mm-hmm.
lot of big tourist destinations in Southeast Asia,
Mm-hmm.
but Laos is not one of them. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. It's not
Not,
really.
not yet.
Yeah, it's not really there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, I'm gonna go back to the food theme,
Oh, I love
but
it. I love the food
yeah,
thing.
yeah. There are a lot of street food markets in
Mm.
Laos where the way they do it is they the owner of the stall will cook maybe like 30 or 40 dishes and lay it out, and people who want to eat, they grab an empty plate from the owner and just pick whatever dish they want, and the
Mm.
owner would sort of price it based on how much food you take.
Oh,
So
wow.
even if you have only one stall, you can eat there for like a few weeks without having the
Even
same thing,
bothering.
right? Because there are
Ah,
30
nice.
to 40 dishes
Exactly.
every
They're
day.
right.
Every day is different. So
Wow.
yeah, so and the food is incredibly cheap because everything is local produce, right? Nothing's
That's
imported.
great.
Yeah, so you can
Mm,
have a good meal for 50 cents, 60 cents, very filling.
nice.
Yeah, and yeah, it's great. And because the temperature is quite warm, people just grab their food and eat outside. It's very good
That's
ambience.
nice. Okay, so we've got Ukraine, Laos, and the last one.
So I guess last one I have to choose one in Africa. Yeah, because yeah, I've been to many different places in Africa as well, and one place that again a very very under the radar kind of destination is Uganda. I think.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Before you even said it, I knew you were going to say that.
Really? Why?
Yes, because one of my nieces has her husband, and he just was like he was in love with Uganda. So I
Mm,
knew it was going to be Uganda or Rwanda, and
mm,
so I just don't know why I thought you would say Uganda, but I've heard
yeah.
so many good things from my family, from friends, and so I guess it really does have to be on my bucket list, and
Yeah.
I need to go visit.
Yeah, and well, I guess what makes it special is that if you look at nearby countries, Kenya and Tanzania, they
Hmm.
all have very big ticket sort of tourist destinations. Whether it's
Yes.
Mount Kilimanjaro or
Yeah.
safari or the beach or anything of that sort.
Hmm.
Uganda doesn't have as many famous destinations. That
Hmm.
makes people much more laid back, and they're very
That's
very appreciative of foreigners showing up. Right?
right.
And they're genuinely friendly and not in a here you're a tourist, let me take your money kind of way, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and safety wise, I think it's a very hectic place, just like Kenya, in
Hmm.
many ways. But people are doing a lot more things on the street, and I feel much safer being in Uganda as a
That's
sort
great.
of a solo tourist as
Yeah.
compared to some of the more nearby countries.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and those qualities make Uganda a very very good place to be. Not just tourists in and out, but to
Uh-huh.
be there for a few weeks
For a
to
few
just
weeks.
enjoy local life.
Yeah. Now, how was the food there?
The food is very good. I think, I mean, there's a lot of local produce. It's nearby Lake Victoria, so there's a lot of
Hmm.
fish. Yeah?
Hmm.
And of course, there are a lot of similarities with Tanzania and Kenya in terms of food as well. A lot of cornmeal, a lot of rice. But there is also a pretty decent sized international community. So there is a lot of diversity in food as well these days.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Oh,
And historically,
cool.
Uganda had a pretty big Indian community, a local
Mm.
Indian community. So there is strong Indian influences in the food. And because its history has a strong European influence on the food as well. So there's a good diversity of food. And I think you really enjoy it if you go there for a
Yeah.
visit.
I think I'm going to make sure that I visit pretty soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me today,
No
Xiaochen. It's
problem.
been wonderful, and I learned so much. And I hope everybody listening also learned a lot. Now, for everybody else, please leave me the name of, leave the website information one more time.
The website of our NGO is www.studyabroad-research.org.
Fantastic. So, thank you again for being here. Everybody, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.